Everybody got a podcast. Everybody is a critic. But nobody want a minute. Everybody going live now. Everybody wanna write it out. Click the link up in the bio. Everybody got a new line. Everybody is offended.
I guess we should start with the reviews from last week's albums. I listened to quite a bit of the White Buffalo stuff.
Really?
But, yeah. Mostly because of Sons of Anarchy is where I first...
Me too.
But that particular EP, the song that resonated with me the most was actually Black and Blue. That song reminds me of certain relationships I've been in, where he just starts out with "Pack up your shit, we're through."
Prepare for Black and Blue.
Yeah, the only song I didn't really care for was
Jameson?
"Oh Darlin'." No,
Really?
"Oh Darlin'."
Oh, dude, I murder that in karaoke.
He just says the word "darling" too many fucking times.
I know, but it sounds so good.
It sounds so close to. I expect him to say Clementine afterwards. I mean,
I never ever would have thought that, but okay, fair enough.
it's a good EP. There's a lot of emotion behind it, and you can tell there was a story there. I really enjoyed it overall. It was definitely an enjoyable album. What were your thoughts on Coma?
I will give 5 stars. I've listened to that album, I think 2 or 3 times now. I listened to it this morning, right before I started running. It was a beautiful morning. Not a beautiful morning. It was a gray, cloudy, kind of overcast morning. But it's beautiful as far as, like, the ground was nice and dry and moist, and it was cool. And I kind of got into... when I got up to the hill, I was trying to catch myself. Like, I was still a little high and would just kind of... And I sat down, crisscross applesauce, put my earbuds in, and I put that album on, and I just kind of sat with my eyes closed, concentrating on my breathing. That may be a perfect album for meditating. Yeah, I could see myself using that album exactly how I used it this morning many times over. There's almost every track on the album is just very calming and peaceful, and I love that. I love shit like that.
Yeah. He has a lot of albums like that, and there's certain ones that you can't get on Spotify. Like, he did one when his mother died called "Hold Me Forever." And then he did another one called, when his dad died, called "Heaven Is Your Home Now." And both of those will just make you want to cry. They're just phenomenal albums.
The cover, it's funny to me because you hear the music, and it is. I'm not going to deny Buckethead is a prolific musician. I'll never say he's not my cup of tea on a lot of things, but neither is a lot of the things I listen to for a lot of people, and that's okay. But Coma, I genuinely fucking enjoyed, and every time I bring it up on Spotify and see the cover with, like, the white mask and the fucking chicken bucket on the head, I'm like, this album doesn't sound like it should have that cover. It just does not sound like it should have that cover, man. That cover looks like something you'd hear on, like, a hardcore metal album cover.
The thing about Buckethead is, I think, if you listen to more of his stuff, you would actually like a lot more of his stuff than you think. Because he is so... With over 400 albums at this point, you've got every type of music you can imagine. Whether it be funk, whether it be electro pop, whether it be an album of him just making his guitar sound like lasers and playing Star Wars music. You know, he's just a weird dude who's really into horror movies and doesn't want to be famous. You know, he created this whole mythos about being raised by chickens. I don't know why the fuck he chose that. But he did, to the point where when he was working with Guns N' Roses, they literally built him a chicken coop in the studio, and he recorded his parts from the chicken coop.
I find that very, very cool and very fun. At the same time, you gave me shit about Insane Clown Posse.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to rectify that, but...
Well... Here's how you rectify it. One has massive, undeniable talent, and one's Insane Clown Posse.
Okay, here's my argument for that. You could deny and say the difference is one person's arguably talented. But I would argue to say that Insane Clown Posse not only does have to, like, I may not love them like a lot of people do. I may like certain songs a lot and like the aspect of a gathering of the Juggalos. But to have a net worth of $30 million, make a series of movies and TV shows, and have a countless sold-out weekend extravaganza every year, you can't say they're talentless, man. They bring an audience with them.
They do bring an audience, but again, these are people. This is the biggest difference. These are people who want fame versus someone who doesn't want fame.
Okay, and that's I'm not giving him a hard time for that. I'm not even giving him a hard time. I'm just saying the idea of a dude who's created a personality about growing up in a chicken coop is just as far-fetched as two fucking dudes from Detroit wearing grease paint on their face. It's all far-fetched, man.
Having seen both of them live,
you've seen ICP live?
I photographed ICP.
Whoop whoop, man.
Yeah, no, there was no whoop whooping from me. I photographed it just so I could shoot Bone Thugs, because the guy wanted a photographer for ICP and nobody wanted to do it, so I agreed to do it so I could shoot Bone Thugs. I in no way wanted to shoot ICP because, one, you risk getting your gear destroyed because all this stupid... They had 27 cases of Faygo they sprayed that night. The Juggalos themselves, as much as I generally don't like Juggalos, they seemed like decent people. I mean, no one was fighting. No one was... I think having a 4-year-old there in Juggalo paint was kind of weird, but, you know.
Girls walking around topless, people doing whippets freely and openly.
It was them, 3-6 Mafia, Mad Child.
3-6 Mafia?
Yeah, I photographed 3-6 Mafia, Mad Child, some other people that I don't know who the fuck they were.
That sounds awesome.
The album I'm gonna give you for
I cannot
this week,
believe I'm fucking losing my hair. Do you understand how much this is starting to fucking affect me now? It's bothering me that I know I'm thinning on top. It bothers me.
Dude, can I say something though? Not only are you thinning on top, look at your hairline. Look in the mirror. Look in the camera.
Yeah, I know. I see it. I see it. I see it, man. I see it. I see it.
And
I'm like Steven Seagal, dude.
Just let it go, Doug. Just let it go.
I can't.
Look, you're probably not going to want to listen to this, but I want you to go into this with an open mind.
I don't want to listen to half the stuff you recommend, but I listen to it because that's what a friend does for another friend. They do shit they want to do. But in fairness, I've ended up liking like 3/4 of what you've sent me, so.
You're going to be listening to Taylor Swift's Folklore.
Until now.
You know what? When this is all said and done, you're going to tell me how good of an album it is.
Oh, I highly doubt that. I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to bitch, man. I'm not going to be that guy. But
I guarantee... Listen, I'm going to tell you right now.
It's going to be a fucking chore, that's for sure.
So Folklore, the idea about Folklore is it's a story. It's a love triangle told from all 3 different perspectives. And it doesn't tell you that, but you figure it out along the way. Like, certain things get brought up again in different songs, but you can tell it's from someone else's perspective. And I just thought it was a really well-written... And look, I was not a Taylor Swift fan. And everyone's like, oh, you gotta check this out. And I listened to it the night it dropped. And I was stunned at how much I enjoyed it. Because it's not poppy, it's very much like a folk album. So what do you got for me this week?
I veered off there for a minute, just staring at what I thought was gray hair for the longest time, and now I'm realizing is like my fucking bald head underneath. All right, for you, you're going to listen to Noah Gunderson, Carry the Ghost. Noah, like the White Buffalo, is somebody I got into through Sons of Anarchy, but
That's where I heard him.
But I'll be honest, once I started listening to him, I've never stopped. What I liked about him was how I discovered him and how I started listening to all these EPs that he'd released and how they all had a very similar stripped down folk sound to them, like a church brother, like family church band kind of thing. And then as he started veering off into his solo stuff, the sound started changing with every album. It went from like melodic to like country and folky to like rock to new wave synth 80s style music to like this beautiful romantic piano album that he did this last time. I got to see him live September 2018, I saw him in Detroit. I saw him play a small club show with his sister playing violin, and he was just him playing guitar. He was touring with the album White Noise, which I was teetering with. I might still have you listen to it as an assignment down the road, because it's number one, it's a phenomenal album, but number two, it's a fascinating thing to see, to go from Carrie the Ghost to listen to what Carrie the Ghost sounds like, and then listen to White Noise and hear where he went to and where he's come. It's so good.
Yeah, dude. Stinning, bro.
That's so goddamn disappointing.
Just shave it, man. Shave it. Embrace it. Just let it go. I mean, did you think it was going to be there forever? I mean, did you constantly think you could do the John hair flip?
I never did that. I like going to the barber, though, man. Like, I feel like I'm going to be getting rid of my ritual now. Like, once I start doing it myself, I'm not going to need to go to a barber anymore. And that's
right. You'll save money.
You have to understand something, though. For me, Skylar Joseph Dennison once said to me, there are three things I don't skimp on: good food, good beer, and music.
Okay.
And when I think about things I don't skimp on, things that because I appreciate them, because I get something out of them, going to the barbershop is like one of those things I've been doing my entire life. And it's not just to get a haircut. It's to hear other people talk. It's to have perspective. It's the conversation. And while, yes, I agree, I'll save money, I feel like I'm losing something a little bit more than just the $15 in my hair. You know what I mean? Like, once I start doing it by myself with a razor, like, I don't know, man. It's an emotional thing for me, man. Like, I didn't realize it was going to hit me this fucking hard until I realized this morning that I, in fact, was losing my hair. And I'm like, it's just something I have to come to terms with on my own, man. It's just not something I expected, because I made it to 41, and you know.
So do me a favor. Take out your ponytail, let it fall, and let me see how. Pull your headset off.
Well, it's gonna be.
Let it fall.
It's been in a rubber band, so it's gonna be all bunched up everywhere and naughty.
No, I just want to see in the front and in the back how much it's actually thinning. Down. Now, to the sides like this.
Oh.
Part it. Okay, so headphones on. You're thinning directly in the middle.
Yeah, I know. I see it.
So when you have it in your right there.
Yeah, I see it.
When you have it in a ponytail, you can't see it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I fucking see it.
Dude, right there, you just look like Corey Taylor. That should be the screenshot. You look like a really angry Corey Taylor after somebody just peed on him.
I'm going to dye all of this jet black and just keep it parted off to the side. We'll see if I still have hair tomorrow or not. It would anger me, considering I paid $20 last week to get it trimmed up. It would very much anger me if I shaved my fucking head. I know me, man. I'm as cheap as they come. I will stew with my hair in a ponytail. You know what's fucked up? You know what's really fucked up is I'm only now starting to realize that I'm losing my hair. Like, today was the day where it all clicked for me, and I figured it out. Like, holy fuck, I'm losing more than I think I am. And I've had my fucking hair up in a ponytail for at least a month and a half, and every fucking woman that I work with walking by me, "Hey, Doug, I really like your man bun." And I'm like, "Thanks." I thought, well, maybe it's making a comeback, and they're making fun of me. Like, now I'm that fucking bald yoga fucking guy who lives by himself with fucking tits, with fucking gluten tits, and I have to keep my fucking balding ponytail up.
I don't think that's what's happening.
And I'm starting to get like on a health kick, and I'm losing weight. The next thing you know, like, I'm going to come up with something outlandish, like, "Yeah, man, I really did like that Taylor Swift album. You know what else I'm doing? I signed up for a fucking kaiju kempo class. I'm going to start learning martial arts, man. I think I'm going to keep the ponytail. It just kind of works, right now when I'm hitting my bow staff."
I think you should do that.
Oh, God damn it! I'm going to go back to wearing a hat. Do you realize up until a month and a half, 2 months ago, when I started feeling confident enough to where I could pull it back in a comfortable ponytail, I stopped wearing a hat. Up until then, I wore a hat everywhere, to work, to shopping, to my mom and dad's house. I didn't know what was going on because I had a hat on my head. No more. I don't want free hats from Napa. I don't want a Punisher hat. I don't want a hat as a gift. You, your hats, hair, people. There's going to be a lot of bleeps at the end of this podcast because this is a PG version of our podcast.
It's just hair. I mean,
to you it's just hair. You've been bald half your fucking life. I've had this forever.
By choice, though. I got bored of dealing with my hair. So
I didn't. I enjoy the ritual of taking care of my hair and flat ironing it and making it look pretty and putting nice smelling product in it.
Stop. Did you just say flat ironing your hair?
You're goddamn right. I flat iron my hair once a day. Not like with on a board, but like a literal made ceramic hair iron that you buy at the like that women use and men. I don't understand a lot of modern fans. I don't understand a lot of certain fan bases. Like, I just don't get it. Like, I'm obsessed with people like you. I'm obsessed with people like John and my brother and Tony and our friend Jason. I'm obsessed with people that I've had a chance to really get to know and really find interesting and find myself never getting bored with having a conversation. I may get irritated where I don't want to talk to you for a couple hours or a couple days, but I never find myself not looking forward to talking to any one of those people. And I don't understand the obsession that a lot of these kids and these I'm not going to say kids, but because it's not just kids, but to me 20-year-olds are kids now.
To me 25-year-olds are kids.
Yeah, maybe even 30-year-olds, but to me like they're so obsessed. None of them actually really talk to each other in person. They're constantly talking through their phone, but they're obsessed with what the other person thinks or the other person's doing. And rather than just saying, "Hey, what are you thinking? What are you doing?" Like you've seen me do it with my brother and other people. Like I start to get in my head and obsess over various scenarios that could be a possibility of why this person didn't text me back within the first 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, I have to take a minute and take a breath and be like, okay, people got shit going on. Like, they'll get a hold of you when they're ready to get a hold of you. This obsession of like, I know you so well, I can tell your fucking hairline. Like, you need a life. Like, you really need to figure out what makes you happy as a person. I can't cry over spilt milk.
I don't think I would ever cry over any milk, spilt or otherwise.
Well, it is an interesting phrase, considering though that you and I neither grew up in a depression type era where milk was like a hot commodity and a precious commodity.
No, like I would cry over dropped bread, but
it depends on what kind of bread. I'll be honest with you. This is the toughest. You got to take a look at my fridge sometime, man. Like my fridge right now has apples, a bag of Fuji apples, bananas, avocados, cottage cheese, feta cheese, duck eggs, chicken eggs, both farm fresh, a pack of turkey bacon, and sourdough English muffins. I also have a loaf of sourdough toast.
English muffins are overrated.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you think less of them? Is that how I'm understanding that phrase?
Yes, as opposed to say a biscuit, I would much rather have a biscuit than an English muffin.
You like what you like. I like what I like.
So Tony, before we even get into this podcast,
hey, buddy.
I know nothing about you. I don't know you. Do you prefer biscuits or English muffins?
Muffins every day.
Weird.
See, what did I tell you, man?
It's an overrated.
Especially since we can't get them in Japan, so really miss English muffins.
Fucking told you, man. Welcome to the show. That's Bob. I'm Doug. We have a guest today, childhood friend of mine, Tony. Tony Andrew. I grew up with. So I've known Tony.
That was close enough.
That was close enough. All right, cool. I think there's like a delay between us, man. It almost feels like you're in Japan because of it. It's awesome.
It's funny.
You guys should both be eating English muffins right now.
God damn it. An hour, Bob. An hour. So I've known Tony since the 6th grade. I've known Tony better part of 20 plus years, I'd say. I met Tony when I moved from Crystal Falls to Kingsford, Michigan, and I met him, I think, shortly after 7th grade. I started in 6th grade, but I don't think I met you until around 7th grade. But my memory is very skewed.
Okay.
But I met him through a mutual friend of ours, Jason Perdue, who is like kind of, I don't speak for Tony, I'll speak for me, is kind of like the center of where if a human being had an origin story of who they were now as a person, it starts with Jason. Jason's the reason I started listening to NWA and Smashing Pumpkins and Green Day and every odd thing that a 6th grader wouldn't think to listen to on his own. Like Jason was kind of like a Sherpa in 6th grade of art and music, and it was a fascinating person. And it was because of him that I ended up meeting Tony. And I don't know very much about the relationship you had with Jason after I moved to Florida, but I knew it grew. I don't necessarily know if Jason taught you music, taught you how to play guitar, but you guys made, which it's going to be throughout this entire episode, and I'm going to scatter a lot of dulcet and fairy and all that music that's on Bandcamp. I'm going to kind of scatter it through. I literally spent the morning taking notes and writing down songs and lyrics and shit, man. Because I want to find a way to upload all that music to Spotify so I can curate a playlist to share with people, dude.
Or you could just download your Bandcamp app.
That's true. You could download, but that's the thing is everybody's going to get inundated with all kinds of apps, and I'm just trying to prevent people from that. But it's a good point. We can just do the Bandcamp.
I have a Bandcamp app.
Close your eyes tonight into your dreams I'll fade. Whisper secrets to me, but don't let me hear a word you say. Close your eyes, pretend that we can get away. We're falling away, we've been betrayed by our own.
I think to start the story of where I met Tony and how I know Tony and why we're friends to this day, we have to start at that beginning with Jason.
You know what's crazy about the way you started talking about Jason is you said, I like that you said it was part of your origin story, because for me as a producer, that's what I always tell people. Actually, meeting Jason is the whole reason I became a producer, because I was into music, and just like how he like introduced you to different bands and new music and new genres and things like that, I had the same experience. His dad Marvin is a musician. I'm sure, taught him a lot when he was young and gave him a lot of influence. For me, like hanging out with both of them and learning music and just being around both of them, I realized what was going on in Jason that I had to learn how to capture. And that's why I quickly, this is in the 90s when home recording was getting more and more popular and you could actually access the gear, So I just dove head first into that and did everything I could to capture what was coming out of Jason, because I just knew there was a fire there that I had to try to bottle. Because we were 15, dude, and you've heard the music. The stuff that he was writing at 15 was not normal. I have yet to find other music that was that deep and that rich, being written by such a young person.
I love you all. Don't say goodbye. I love you all. I'll stand beside you.
He always had a very deep, when I first met him, he was drawing comics at a cafeteria table. I met him through Ian Bushy, because I thought Ian Bushy was the coolest artist.
Ian.
I met Ian because Ian, I thought, had a great comic books. He would draw cartoons and comics, and I thought that was cool as shit. And then he introduced me to Jason, who was doing the same thing, but Jason was on another level with his art. It wasn't refined, but for our age, in the concepts he was writing and the fucked up stories that he was coming up with, and so hilarious. That Beavis and Butthead, MTV, Image Comics, Marvel era, just it came out of this kid that just kind of introduced me to all that shit. I agree with you. I think Marvin was a big influence, because I remember spending a lot of time at Marvin's old house when they lived next to my grandmother's house. And I remember Marvin being in a band and playing music that they recorded for us, and then Jason going into the basement with his guitar and just playing me music he was writing. Like, he was teaching me how to play, like, opening notes to Smashing Pumpkins songs, but then he'd start playing music that he was actually writing himself, lyrics and everything. And I remember scratching my head. I remember sitting in the room with Mike Swan. We were there one day listening to him, and I kept scratching my head thinking to myself, how does somebody do this? Like, and I'm watching it happen, but I don't understand where it's coming from. And it, to this day, it's so weird because I feel like my entire life I've tried to champion not just for him but for you. When I moved to Florida, I started working for a radio station right out of high school as an intern, and I was able to get myself some shifts on like the rock night, the Sunday night extreme rock night, and we got to started playing like local band music. And I remember submitting like a couple dulcet tracks and getting them on the radio and getting to talk about it. And you know, everybody thought it was like, you know, it's good, like the production's interesting. I'm like, well, they're starting out, but it's cool. Like, I fucking love that. I still love that fucking music. So I don't know. I feel like sometimes I metaphorically suck your dick a little too much, and I get lost in the message of what I'm trying to go for.
I think what you were trying to say is that it's a similar thing to what I always try to do is like spread the story about Jason and just who he was through, you know, just the experiences that we've had together, but then also the music, you know. Been a huge motivation for me is being able to continue on, you know, doing what he can't do.
I leave in 96. I basically spend all that time soaking up as much as I can with Jason, but as you do when you get older, things change, life changes. And I left in 96 to go to Florida, and I spent 20-some-odd years living in Florida before coming back here. I lost track of you guys for a little while as we got older. I stayed in touch more with you. Jason, I think I've spoke to 2 or 3 times since I left for Florida. I remember talking to him once when my first day of college, being able to get a hold of him. My mom said something was going on with Jason. I can't remember what it was, but I called him, and he was with Nick Mangini, and Nick was being a dick and hanging up the phone continuously, so I just gave up and went to class. And then I got to see Jason one more time in my life, and I want to say it might have been a year or two before he died. I came back to visit family, and I had been in touch with him, and I think he was staying with his mom. He was working up at Pine Mountain, I believe. He had a CD full of new music that you guys had recorded that I hadn't heard, and he's like, I got a CD for you. We got to get together. I got to see him for a little bit, and he gave me the CD.
I wonder if I will sleep. I wonder if I will dream. Shiny little people, melancholy empties.
That was the last time I ever saw him, and then I got a phone call letting me know that he was gone, and that's kind of where it stopped for me with Jason. Was I never really I've got to see his dad Marvin and his sister Emily many times over since then, and it's been wonderful talking to them. But I'm curious now where after I left, what happened, not just with you guys, but like what happened to you? Like what happened after high school? How did you get to Japan? I want to know it all. So I'm going to shut my fucking mouth and I'm going to let you go, buddy.
Well, I guess picking up from there, after high school, we all tried to actually move up to Minneapolis and like make it in the big city and shit.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, and that lasted about 6 months, and then little by little, people started moving back, and then point where it was like our drummer, myself, and then just one friend who just came out just for the ride, like just to see where this thing was going. We were the only ones left, and the rest of the band was like split up. And I was like working at a shitty gas station, and some dude comes in at like 2 in the morning. You know, I'm working midnight shift, and like robbed me for cigarettes. Like, it's 2 in the morning in Minneapolis, and I just got robbed for cigarettes. I don't want to do this anymore, and I joined the Marine Corps, which is like the most ridiculous thing you could imagine me doing at the time. Because I'm like long hair, had been playing in grunge bands, you know, all through high school, and was like a big government guy, I guess you could say.
I get you.
It seemed like one of those moves that was just extreme enough to get me the fuck out of the situation that I was in, and it definitely did that. And so I ended up, I joined the Marine Corps, and then I went to Okinawa, Japan as my one and only duty station. And I never left, man. Like, I've been there for 20 years now.
That's awesome.
I did 5 years in the Marine Corps, and then I was like, thanks for the ride. I think I'm going to stay in Japan. And then just separated on island. Was doing like IT work for a little while. And then around 2012, I just stopped. I was like, I'm done. I'm going to do music full time now. I'm done doing the government work. I'm done, contracting and all that shit. So I focus purely 100% on music from 2012 on. First got to Okinawa, I was playing in bands and stuff anyways. Like, I started a band where that was the first time I was singing. Because Jason and I had stayed in contact the whole time I was in Japan. Didn't work on much because I could tell he was getting more deeply into his like occult and like writing phase. Like, he was really into writing these long, like 30-40 page poems, like crazy weird like OTO stuff, you know what I mean? Aleister Crowley.
I remember
too much Aleister Crowley in his reading diet.
He had like a bunch of books. I was amazed by how much writing he had done.
Yeah, self-published a bunch of books too. That was like, early 2000s. That was when I first got to Japan. So I was not going to stop making music, and that was me first experience like making music separately from Jason, because he was getting more deep into his occult stuff, and I was like, well, I'm just into the music. Like, I love art is art, whatever style art you like, but for me, I just love music. Like, it just resonates with me. Religion.
I agree.
So you've been doing music there for the last 11 years, 9 years.
Full time, yeah.
Okay. So Doug has told me you do music, but Doug has not told me anything about any type of music you do, because Doug is a shitty friend.
No, Doug's a fucking stoner who doesn't understand everything, and we'd rather have him explain it himself. Jerk.
When I got into producing the stuff that Jay and I were making, a lot of that stuff was just grunge, experimental, lo-fi stuff. Yeah, I didn't... at the time, I wasn't aware of the whole West Coast lo-fi movement with, guys doing stuff on, like, old 4-tracks and stuff like that. But we definitely had that sound unintentionally. Like, that was what we were doing. We just didn't know that that was a thing.
It's one of my favorite it's one of my favorite things to, and I'll share it with you, Bob. I'll put it in the podcast, the link for the Bandcamp, but it's one of my favorite things about listening to that is the sound. Like, It's funny how we talk about this a lot. It's funny how music can transport you mentally back to a time, not just a time and place, but a certain time and place and a certain memory. And it's anytime I listen to some of that old production on these songs and that, it takes me back to certain moments in time with you guys, man. When we were kids. It's fascinating.
Life's so good to me, and I'd love to stay. I'm everything and nothing all at once. I have no past today, and I am an angel and I am an alien. I'm going away.
That's how I feel when I listen to my friend Justin's old band, Fungool. And it was an old punk band from when we were in high school, and they were 4-track. And they were going to get signed. They were set to do a 7-inch with Less Than Jake, and then the bass player was like, I don't want to do anything anymore. And the singer said, well, I think I'm going to go try to date this girl in New York, and that was the end of the band. That was just it.
Oh my god.
Like, right before they got signed, they just fell apart.
Funny, as long as I've been doing music, though, I've always been very independent, like very underground. Never even considered like getting signed as being a possibility.
That's what I
Yeah,
love
but
about you.
when I say getting signed, though, I'm talking like doing split 7 inches. I'm not talking like a major label. I'm talking like
Punk rock
Uh,
shit. Like,
yeah,
like Southern
very-
punk rock.
Yeah.
yeah, like long before Fueled by Ramen was a thing, you know. So I'm very used to watching people record on 4 tracks, and I've got some friends who are in the music industry, and I've gotten to.
Oh yeah. Does Andrew WK follow you on Twitter? Fuckface. Are you
Look, man,
friends?
I can't help it that bothers you so much.
You have no idea. It bothers me less that he's marrying Kat Dennings and more that he follows you for no fucking foreseeable reason.
Well, I mean, I'm going to tag him in every episode that you talk about him in.
Ooh, I hope so, man. I want him to teach me how to grow a power mullet with the remaining hair that I do have.
It's called not cutting it. That's generally how you grow one of those.
Okay, I'll do it.
All right. So I was talking to a friend recently. They were going to LA to do mastering. And I needed somebody to explain to me the difference between mixing and mastering. Because as someone who's not in the business, I don't know what the difference is. I just know there are 2 processes that happen before the record comes out. So that's all very interesting to me.
Yeah. I got really into the engineering side of it early on. Learning all like the home recording gear that was coming out at the time. My first digital recorder that I got was a Roland VS840 that would record on 100 meg zip discs, which was hilarious.
Fuck, I forgot about
those.
zip
Are
discs.
$10 a piece in the 90s, dude.
Yep. Yeah, zip discs were great.
Hundreds of those things. Those projects on that thing, I think, could do a total of like 32 tracks if you used all the virtual tracks or whatever. But you could load up a song that had realistically 20 tracks going, like on one of those, and it would fill up your 100 meg zip disk.
See, now I have so many questions with you being a producer about bands. I'm going to use Pantera as a good example. So you listen to any Pantera album, you hear 7 fucking guitars, but yet live, there's 1 guitarist. What are your thoughts on people constantly playing the multiple backing tracks, not just one?
It's a tough question because we're living in an era now where these are the main type of performer. You know, that's like the big popular thing now is DJs and just playing the backing track. You know?
Yeah, that's
Sometimes, rarely, they'll be playing like one keyboard part on top of the backing track, but really, like, all they're doing is the backing track. So, over the years, because I came from that grunge/punk background, you know, the lo-fi background where it's like, if you're not playing instrument on stage, you know, you're not a band. And over the years, I've kind of let that go and become more accepting and understanding that it's about the show. It's about the entire night's performance. It's not necessarily about the integrity of your musicianship.
So about the experience more than anything else.
Yeah, because people are paying money, you know, like they're taking the night off. They might get a babysitter, like all that shit. So you got to make sure it's worth the money. So in that respect, I understand why bands do it. It just depends. Like, is the music that they make like in the studio? You know, like are they actually hiring like a whole band to do it for them and doing like a Milli Vanilli thing, or you know, like. As long as they're making the music themselves and some kind of little dance and maybe pushing some buttons on the stage, I think it's still a show, you know?
No, I'm fine with it. I remember being a kid and listening to like different tracks, and I'm like, why is there so many guitars when there's one guitarist? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, and then another part of it is kind of like with the mastering thing that you brought up, every like wars that happened, like especially in the 90s, you had the guitar tone wars, where people were just getting really, really deep and detailed about guitar tone and making those multiple layers so that you get this like one fat, chunky, distorted tone that, you know, nobody else can make because we got, you know, this many digital layers and this many tube amplifier layers, and you know what I mean?
And then they're doing the artificial harmonics and...
Yeah. And it's just ultimately just trying to make the track that the consumer is going to listen to over and over and over again multiple times sound as perfect as possible.
Now, see, I've never put a lot of thought into it. I've got a meat brain. I got a monkey brain. So I put music in my ears to kind of, like Bob does a lot, to set my mood, to kind of bring me to a place I want to go to or whatever, help me sort shit out or meditate. And I don't understand, I understand what you guys are saying, but it's funny because I don't think about that kind of stuff. The closest I ever came is I remember when I first met Bob, he's always been like a big audio dude, like into tech and stuff. And I remember when I first met you, you had this huge surround sound setup, like a digital surround. It was wired. This is before wireless and shit. And
I was running like DVD audio and Super Audio CD when those formats were still available, and so he'd never heard like music that was mixed for surround sound. I know exactly where he's going.
Put on 9 Inch Nails, and I remember my mind being blown at the intricacies of every instrument used on that. Like the shit that you don't pay attention to when you're not really listening to quality gear to hear it with. You know, it's fascinating shit, man.
Early 2000s, Bob?
Yes, that would have been 2002, 2003, SACD and DVD-A. DVD is a horrible name for it, but
I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember that. And 9 Inch Nails released, I think, with Teeth in 5.1, and then they did a remastering of the Downward Spiral.
They were like Louis Armstrong did some. They re-released some of Louis Armstrong stuff that way. But I mean, the entire catalog was like 34 albums. There was very little SACD or digital. U2 did a couple. I think Boy was released in SACD. Yeah, there wasn't much put out that way, and it's unfortunate because it was a great way to listen to music. Best way to me, other than a really nice pair of headphones.
Well, it looks like iTunes is trying to create a new surround format or promote a new surround format from
their spatial audio. It's basically Atmos remixed to headphones, is what I'm gathering.
I just didn't know how they were doing it, because it's like, at the end of the day, you only have 2 channels. Like,
right, yeah. I'm not sure what they're going for, but a friend of mine just asked a band, like, hey, can we get some of your tracks pre-mixed for Apple Spatial Audio? And he's like, let me look into the logistics of that. He's like, I don't know if it's worth the time or the money to go in and remix this stuff for what we're going to get paid to do it.
It happens a lot of times with these gimmicky formats. It's like, at the end of the day, people listen to music on 2 channels.
Yeah.
You know, all these other ones are great. It's super cool, but it's never going to really make mass adoption.
No, it won't.
You know what will? 3D televisions. Mark my word, they're making a comeback.
I promise you they are not. I promise you they are not.
Just like this isn't coming back?
You have a better chance of that coming back naturally than you do of 3D TV coming back. Not Avatar 2, 3, 4, or 5 can save that shit.
I worked with a guy who bought one factory model right off the line, and it was his proudest moment. He wouldn't shut up about it for a week, and then the next year he stopped talking about TV altogether.
Yeah. Well, it's like... I loved personally the idea of curved TVs. It makes sense as a viewing option if you're alone. However, if the 3 of us are in a room and I took the middle seat, you 2 are fucked. You know, it's good for personal viewing only, unless you've got like an 86-inch, and then you can kind of work your way around it. But they only ever made it up to 65 inches, so it didn't matter. Yeah, I'm the
this
tech
being
nerd
said,
of the
Bob,
2.
I'm curious about your opinion on VR adoption. We're going to reach mass adoption?
I think it will, but unfortunately, as Doug knows, it will not for me.
Yeah, Bob gets vertigo.
I have like the worst case of vertigo of any human to ever walk the earth. The other part is the headsets are going to have better resolution. Like his PS4 headset has 720p, and that's just not going to cut it for mass market nowadays.
But for a dipshit stoner like me, it's awesome.
Dude, I'm gonna send you a Virtual Boy.
Send me an Oculus Quest, please. I want to get the Resident Evil 4 virtual reality coming out.
That's not coming out for like another year.
I still need the Oculus. There's other games I can play. Send me one.
How about you wait and see if the Oculus Quest isn't upgraded just for that game? before you buy an Oculus Quest.
I'm saving my money anyway because the way he's made Japan sound to me in the last 2 days, I think I want to go to Japan and not look back. I think I'd clean up over in Japan, man. I'd be bigger than Sumo.
I think you misunderestimate sumo.
The cultural impact of it and how big of a thing
and
it is, I don't think I do.
And I promise you will not be as big as Marty Friedman.
Give it time. Give it time.
He comes down to Okinawa even.
See? And Doug's like, who's Marty
Yeah.
Friedman?
I'll become the next Mick Foley. I'll start wrestling in death matches down there. I don't give a shit. I'll jump into barbed wire, man. Fight guys with dead fish.
I don't think you will.
Okay. Keep disagreeing with me. See what happens. I'm going to leave this podcast for something better. Way out. Where's Japan? East? Is it east? Southeast?
Christ.
I'm not good with geography.
I'm gonna fight people with fish in a country I don't know where it's at. East Coast.
East Coast. Okay. I can handle it.
No, I bring up Marty Friedman because he was a well-loved musician here, and then when he went to Japan, he just took the fuck off.
Oh, okay. I thought he was a wrestler. My bad. I didn't know who
Him like
Marty
a cult icon.
Yeah, like he was on a television show, and he got so annoyed that he was known more for that show than his music, and then he said, I realized one day, it doesn't matter. All these people know who I am. They love me. They love my music. I don't care if they love the show. He's like, if that's why they know me, that's fine. But it still gets my music out there. Marty Friedman used to play for Megadeth. He was part of the Rust in Peace lineup.
Okay.
And he left Megadeth and he went to Japan, and he just has been a virtuoso over there for 20-something years now.
A lot of anime music.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was surprised when you and I first reconnected after I moved back up here. I was surprised at how much, like, I don't even know what you'd call it. Like, it almost seemed like industrial punk what you were doing. Like, how big of a scene that seemed to be. It's just fascinating to see what other cultures take. You know.
Well, that's an interesting just result of Okinawa's music scene. One of the main reasons why I stayed in Okinawa, of course, was the weather. Being a Uber on a tropical island, loving the shit out of that. But the other reason why is because Okinawa's music scene is very unique in that this is where, because of the war, because of all the military bases, there's a particular street next to a big air base there, Kadena Air Base. It's called Gate 2 Street. And it's like the party district. And it's the party district since after the war. It's like ground zero for where both cultures, like musically, really started to connect and share ideas. And it all happened right on the street. And even when I got there in 2001, there was tons of live houses and clubs, and it's since become a pretty version of itself over the last 20 years as live music has gotten less popular and more like club music has become the thing. But it's still very much a cultural hub in Okinawa and in Japan for music especially. And what's unique about Okinawa is that there's a metal scene there, and there's just always been a metal scene there, since I've been there. And there's really good hardcore, like New York style hardcore bands for whatever reason, and straight up metal, like Lamb of God type shit. One of the reasons why a lot of the projects I was involved in were just really heavy.
Hearing you talk about, you said it's Second Gate Street? Two Gate, or Gate 2.
Gate 2.
Hearing you talk about that reminds me of hearing somebody talk about Gilman Street in Berkeley or Haight Street in San Francisco, where everything just happens in this one small region and blows up from there. Because, you think of Hop Ivy, Rancid, all the Bay Area bands were all on Gilman Street, for at least for punk.
It was when I realized that after being there for so long, when that idea dawned on me that, this is the spot where the two cultures, made that connection with music and with live entertainment and stuff, that really got the gears turning on, okay, how can I highlight that fact right there? Just like what you were saying, how all across the world, especially in the States, there's certain regions where scenes come out of. you know, and it's very specific to a region. It's very like geographically, you know, contained. That area, that Gate 2 Street area in the Okinawan language is called Koza, name of the village. So I created a brand while I was there called Neo Koza. And the focus of that brand was purely just to create promotional content, like not ads, but like create like a YouTube page, an Instagram page, just to promote the area. And it was purely just to promote this scene that's in that area. Over the last 20 years, I watched it go from a really strong, great live scene to now kind of just like a nightclub, you know, tech scene, you know? Scene has kind of like died down in a way. So we tried to really spend some time like finding the bands that were playing and then also creating shows, you know, based around these bands that had styles, and then, you know, making videos for them, like creating these live events for streaming and stuff like that. We really spent the last few years before Corona pushing that project, and that was like, you know, like a community project, really. Rona happened and all that shit's gone now.
Such a bummer.
Let's say you asked me if I thought that VR would make mass market, and I can't think of the name, so I'm going to come off as an asshole right now, but it's something that is huge in Japan, where people go to these shows to watch virtual entertainers, like 30-foot high anime singing characters. Do you think that kind of thing?
That's a real thing?
Yes.
Dude, I got to go to Japan. That sounds awesome. I didn't know that was a real thing.
They sell out stadiums, dude, and there's no one actually on stage. And I'm curious, like, if that kind of thing will ever reach outside of that market. I mean, the closest that ever really happened here was like the Tupac hologram.
Can you imagine a 30-foot Tupac show?
I don't want to imagine a 30-foot Tupac.
Dude. I think that would be dope as shit,
But
man.
you know what I'm referring to, though, right?
Yeah, you never thought about that, man. It's funny to see what translates and what doesn't translate, you know, in and outside of Japan. There's certain things that, like, Japan is very particular about. Like, in design, they say Japanese consumers like very complex design ideas. They like it busy and very complicated, whereas in the US, we like it very, like, simple and minimalist. To think, like, that's a Japanese consumer thing, like that they're willing to pay for those shows, or if it would actually work in the States. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, I'm curious. I didn't know Doug had never heard of it. There's one that's super popular, and I can't remember the name of the artist, but I watched several videos of this artist selling out giant stadiums, and I'm just like, it's a cool looking show, but I don't know if I would pay money to go watch what is in effect a pre-recorded cartoon with a bunch of other people. I think it would be fun. I don't know.
I
know you would.
I kind of think I would almost guarantee I would, because I've paid money to go to Pink Floyd laser light shows on acid, so I would absolutely pay to see a 30-foot CGI show. That would be amazing.
I went to that show too, but I wasn't on acid. I was on mushrooms. But
that sounds even more fun.
It was until they were wearing off, and I had to yell, like, "Can you please hurry up? This shit's wearing off." Because they were doing well, you want to hear one more track? I'm like, yeah, hurry the fuck up. I'm laying on a floor, staring up at a ceiling, probably covered in piss, because who knows what's happened in that room.
The best days of your life, I say.
No, it's not the best time of my life.
Laying on your back getting pissed on? Come on, man. Those are stories you'll tell your grandkids one day.
Those are stories I'll tell your grandkids.
You were doing the music scene and Corona happened, and then you also started doing a graphic novel, which I fucking loved when you told me you were doing it. That's an absolute thing that I tie back to Jason, because I remember all of us in his mom's house reading comic books, endless shit that he had. I remember he had those rock comics, like the Nirvana comic and shit like that.
Yeah, the old Ninja Turtle ones.
Yep, and the Max and all that shit. And I thought that was so fucking cool when you told me you started doing your own graphic novel, and I'm curious as to how that came about.
Since 2012, I'd always, I guess, maintained a persona or identity for own personal music, because I like doing music with other people. I like doing projects with other artists. So that's why I've always considered myself just a producer, but I also make shit that's just for me as well. So I built this called Shamanic Ape, and that's my performance name when I actually perform my own stuff that I'm making. And I just use, simple DJ gear. Sometimes I'll do some performances on a Ableton Push, which is kind of like a giant sampler that you can also play as an instrument. But it's just really easy, simple performance setup. That way I can like travel anywhere, you know what I mean? Throw a couple things in my backpack and really perform anywhere. And also, like I said, give a home for songs that I make that are just for me. And so I've always maintained that, and always, done little shows and events here and there on the side. But once Corona happened, I was like, okay, well, it doesn't make sense to maintain a 6-piece live band during a global pandemic. So I'm going to go back to making my own shit. And it just so happened that one of the artists, he's a hip-hop artist based out of Brooklyn. His name is Sonny Hayes. Well, he's one of the artists that I've been working with in Japan for a while. He was there for a few years. Now he's back in Brooklyn. But him and I had always written together in the studio, like actually songwriting for other artists. So we'll do stuff like we'll make a song and he'll make like lyrics and stuff, and we'll kind of collaborate on a song for other artists that we work with, because he's a really good songwriter and I'm pretty fast at making beats and arranging and stuff. So we have a pretty efficient system together. Him and I, being into writing and always talking about writing, we had been talking about this idea of making a story for a comic book for a while. And it just so happened we met the new CEO of Heavy Metal, this guy named Matt Medney. We pitched him the idea and he thought it was super cool, and then hooked us up with a company to actually produce the comic. It was a really fun process. I learned a whole bunch of shit about the comic book industry that I definitely never knew. I've always been a fan, but I didn't know how comics were made until this last year. One of those super nerdy dad boner things, but like the thing that I got excited about was just like the coordination, the management of the project itself. I thought was really interesting, because kid, and you're reading a comic, you think, oh, the guy who wrote the story also drew all the pictures and then like made the cover and like, got someone to print it, and then it's done. After going through this whole thing this last year, I learned like, okay, like any other project, there's somebody in the middle kind of managing all these external entities. And they had Sonny and I, and we had a third writer, this guy named Stephen McFarlane. We wrote the story, them a script in a comic book format, in the format that they wanted us to provide it, and then they actually provided us like views of artists, like in their art style. So it was like, here's this guy's style, here's this guy's style, here's this girl's style, and we were able to basically choose how we wanted our comic book to look based off of these artists' different styles. And they had many options. I was like, oh shit, these guys work with a lot of artists. So then if we choose that person, they send them the info about the project, and if they take the contract, then they're on the project, and then it goes forward. And then they have separate people for cover, separate people for like doing all the text and all the the word bubbles and all that stuff. It's many people on the team. I never in my my whole life would have thought that it took this many people to make a comic book.
That sounds like a factory, like how comics are made like in a meat factory almost, but just like a digital. I never would have guessed that too.
Very modular, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you've got your penciler, your inker. The inker adds depth and shading. He's not just a fucking tracer.
Trace a chocolate around your dead fucking body, you fuck!
I'll put my pencil through your fucking thorax.
Back when we were kids watching that, they never really showed us or told us anything like that. I'm sure it was done way differently, but I think the most I ever saw was like promotional Marvel videos at like the comic book store occasionally of like Todd McFarlane sketching out Spider-Man, like he said, that's kind of what my mentality was. Like, oh yeah, dude just sits there, writes it out, his buddy writes the story, and then boom, ink it and print it.
And if you're Kiss, put a couple drops of blood into the ink.
Or as I call them, the parents.
So yeah, when we
what did you just say?
I said kissers. I like to call them the parents of Coheed and Cambria, the grandparents of Coheed and Cambria.
I would relate them more to ICP with the face paint, but to each their own. The Great
I think we got you,
Malenko.
Doug.
It's all good, man. It's because we're fam. Whoop whoop, man.
One of the things that when we started this project, Sonny and I wanted to make sure we had different art styles. We very much have different types of comics that we're into. So Sonny wanted that like classic, clean American comic look. And if you look at his books, you'll see it definitely has that look. But I told him I wanted like that gritty early 90s Image comic look, like the early Dark Horse type stuff. So the artists that we found have two very unique styles, actually work pretty well together. Like I was surprised at how well they work together. They kind of complement each other.
I love the artwork for that graphic novel. You have it set up now as like as a website exclusively, like all digital.
What we did was when we first launched the pre-orders, we have a members site, and then we give exclusive content through the members site. We'll release tracks and videos and interviews and things like that. In the members site, there's a paywall, but it's a $5 paywall. So we're basically just saying, hey, buy us a beer. Not even once a month, like just once. Just buy us a beer once.
Yeah.
And you can have, all the free videos and music and shit. So we had a link on the members site to order copies because we had the first 100 prints that we had packaged and signed as a separate thing. So that's what we had available for pre-order, but now both books are available individually for order on the site. So if you go to carniverse.com, that's where the books are available.
Okay.
Name of the series is the Carniverse Saga. We came up with this idea of living as a musician is a lot like being a carny. You're just constantly traveling. It's all about, just like entertaining the masses, moving on to the next show, and you live this like very transient type of lifestyle too. We kept like pulling all these connections between being a musician and being a carny. And then I was also looking at how like the culture is becoming more of a thing again. It's a lot like the carnival, they even have like Ferris wheels and shit like that at festivals now. We tried to pull those ideas into a narrative storyline, and then we spent several months actually building out just like the physics of the universe, like different, background stories of things that happen. How did the universe come into existence and all those type of things. Once that was solid and we felt like we had a good foundational universe built, then we wrote the stories and then are continuing to write, the individual storyline. The idea of Carniverse is it's an open universe, so we can fit other characters into it. It's not just about my character or Sonny's character. We're just two characters in the Carniverse, and then there's many different things happening within that universe. That will get rolled out through the website, through video products, and then through the comic books.
Fucking awesome. I grew up with that dude.
Actually, you and I were the ones that we got into comic books together. Like, you really got me into comics because I used to go over to your house after school. We would sit and we would just look at comic books together.
Really? I never knew that. I mean, I knew that we hung out and shit, but I didn't know I was the catalyst for that.
I wasn't that into comic books until I hung out with you.
That was like the best, and that's, to me personally, that's the, like, I'll go on about comic books and wrestling at fucking, if you don't stop me. But like, that era.
Trust me, I will stop you.
That era that we grew up in, that early, I would say late 80s, early to mid 90s era of comics was some of the most memorable era. I'm like, good and bad, but like, not even just the comics themselves, but like the DNA behind getting a comic book, being a kid. Like I speak for myself, but like the era we grew up in, the town we grew up in, we had Powerhouse Comics, Easy Reader Comics, and we had a couple other comic book stores over that Bergeron owned over by the library. I can't think of the name of it.
Yeah, Fred had his spot. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't.
That spot.
He had that one, and then there was one across from where Domino's used to be over by Kresge's that was never open. Like, they closed down because nobody ever worked there.
What's a Kresge's?
In the town we grew up in, Kresge's was a department store. And back in the day, my mother was a waitress at Kresge's. Basically, you'd walk in if you wanted to get clothes, like Kmart-style clothes for your kids, or those plastic vinyl Halloween costumes with the masks, or Star Wars toys. You could get, it was basically like a Woolworth, like a small Walmart, but when you walked in, there was like a food counter, and they made fresh donuts, they made amazing breakfast, but it was all cooked in lard and fried fat and grease. But it was just that it was. I'm sorry, I know I that was an over explanation for what you wanted to know. It was a department store in our town.
Well, you lost me when you said it was a department store and my mom was a waitress. So
My
the
mom
two
worked there behind the counter. Yeah, you're right.
generally don't go together.
You're right. You're right.
Is she rollerblading too? I mean, is it Jackrabbit Slims?
When I was a kid, my mom worked behind the counter there. She's a waitress, and I would spend a lot of times hanging out because she didn't have money for a sitter, and I would just sit and look through toys and Halloween costumes and cassette tapes
And eat lard.
and eat donut. Though, dude, you don't fucking talk shit until you've had a donut that's been cooked in fat. That's the way to eat a fucking donut. That's the legitimate.
Doug, I'm a fat guy. I'm sure at some point in my life I've had a donut that's been made in fat. I don't know that I have, but guessing by the amount of donuts I've consumed in my lifetime, at least one of them, odds are in the favor that I've had something to that degree.
I don't think about these things, man. You make me feel self-conscious about my brain.
I'm the one with mental issues. Are you kidding me?
I think we both are pretty fucking crazy, if I'm being honest.
It's the LSD. But
I agree with you, Doug. That era, like the late 80s, early 90s, man, it was like that was when a lot more independent comics were coming out and a lot wilder storylines were being allowed to actually be made into comic books.
okay, so I have a quick question for both of you. Since you mentioned that time frame is your time frame for indie comics, what was the first indie comic you remember reading?
I mean, do you consider Image independent?
At the time,
At
yeah.
the time, absolutely.
The Max was pretty crazy. I remember when Jason first started bringing the Max issues, I was like, that's pretty cool, and I started getting into that, yeah.
To this day, that is the same for me. It's my. I love that comic book so much. I got a page of it tattooed on my fucking arm, dude.
Oh, shit, dude.
I
I didn't even realize that was the Max.
Yeah, I fucking love the Mac. I remember walking into Powerhouse Comics after school one day when Jason told me we had a comic book store across the street from school. And I remember taking pop can money and going into that. Originally to play Street Fighter 2. They had that arcade of Street Fighter 2 in the back corner there. And that's the reason I went, was to play video games. And then this guy worked me on the counter and said, do you read comics? And I'm like, not really. And he's like, well, check this comic. And I remember him recommending issue 2 of the Max. It just came out. And he's like, this is issue 2. Start with issue 1. And I remember bringing that to 6th grade and reading that. And then seeing Jason have the same comics and putting 2 and 2. But I agree with Tony. Like, that is, to me, my be-all, end-all comic was the Max.
So this is where our age difference comes into play. My first foray into underground comics, if you will, was Cerebus the Aardvark. I remember reading Cerebus the Aardvark in the 4th grade. And if you look at the history of Cerebus, he never went mainstream. He's like, I'm just going to do this and then I'm done. Cerebus traveled through time, if my memory is right. It was all set during different periods, and I got into it during Cerebus the Samurai Aardvark. That was back when Ninja Turtles was still black and white, and my oldest issue of Ninja Turtles that I still own is the original Ninja Turtles number 10.
Those books were violent as hell. Those old Ninja Turtle, those original ones were so fucking
Yeah,
violent.
they were cool as fuck.
My buddy Nate, he had Ninja Turtles number 1. It had no cover. First print with no cover. And I remember reading it, and Shredder dies at the end, and then years later, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird were like, we didn't know what to do. We killed the main nemesis in the first fucking issue. We weren't really thinking ahead. And so we had to get really creative. It's like, there was never supposed to be space rhinoceroses and shit. He's like, that wasn't supposed to be part of it. Passenger gets in the car. First thing he says to me, he's like, I'm gay. I'm like, cool. And he's like, me and my boyfriend had a fight. Obviously, you want to talk about this, so what did you fight about? He's like, I'm skinny and he's not. He's like, yeah, that's what the fight was about. Can you take me to this bar? I'm like, yep. On the way there, he must have asked me 10 times, where are we going? I'm like, the bar you requested. He's like, where did you pick me up from? I'm like, this address. He's like, that's my house. I probably should have stayed there. I'm like, probably should have. He's like, can you pick me back up? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So that's a good way to say goodbye to a guest.
It was a funny story, dude.
It's a good story.
Where are you going from here?
The tour kicks off in July now. We had some dates shift around, so stuff got pushed back later in the year. So from July to October, the first leg of the tour, we will kick it off in Indianapolis
Nice.
and in Vegas in October. So July to October, we'll be touring. We'll be I'll be in Florida. I'm going to be going back and forth between Atlanta and Orlando.
Tony, I love you, man. It's been great talking to you. I'm happy to have you back on. I hope you have a safe travel, my friend. It's good to see you as always. Have a wonderful
meeting you.
weekend. Be safe, brother.
Did it. Thanks for your time, guys.
Thanks for
Thank
yours.
you. This has been Bob,
And Doug.
and we have definitely saved you from boredom
I
today.
think this was a good episode, and I think once you started, I don't necessarily know a lot about engineering or music or anything like that, or sound the way you guys do, but I love listening to two people who know what they're talking about talk about that shit.
I know a little bit, not anything like he knows, but that was fun.
Right on, man. Right on.
Routines to keep us sedated, shot through veins that can't be healed. My little alien love made me disposable. Fuck, looking back to the day I should have thrown you away. Sometimes I wake in a self I can't help but hate. Between you and suicide, and the splinters of my faith, and heaven knows I'm not forever. Like a purity in me, it is you